Hi, my name's Finlay. I'm part of Safe Landing. We're a community of aviation workers all across the sector, all around the world. We're really interested in how can we reduce the climate impact of aviation as quickly as possible. So with that context, it's really exciting to be here at the ZeroAvia facilities. We've just had a tour round, looked at their offices, looked at some of their test facilities, and I've got Dominic here with me this morning. Good morning, Dominic.
Good morning.
So yeah, actually just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how would you explain ZeroAvia?
Yeah, sure. So Dominic Weeks, I'm Head of External Affairs here at ZeroAvia, so I'm responsible for all of our communications to the outside world. ZeroAvia was founded in 2018 with a mission of trying to tackle the climate impacts of aviation. In particular, we have been working on this mission for the last 7 years, and so far we're flying prototypes. We're using hydrogen electric systems to deliver electrification to commercial aviation. So really the key is to try and tackle the full climate impact of aviation, the CO2 and the non-CO2 impacts, also the environmental impacts in terms of clean air, reduced noise, and hydrogen electric systems, fuel cells, give you the opportunity to do that. So that's what we're trying to pioneer.
Brilliant, yeah, and this is like a working facility. We've got people drilling away around the back as well, so like lots of progress going on here. So at Safe Landing, we're really interested in understanding what does the future of air travel look like? Really keen to get some of your opinions on that. But before we do that, it'd be nice to just take a bit of a flight through your life. So if we go back 25 years first, what were you doing, and what motivated you to get into sustainability, and how did you find yourself in aviation?
Yeah, I mean, I go back a little bit further. I go back 42 years. So I grew up in Derby, and my parents are actually both teachers. So we had no association with Rolls-Royce, but a lot of the people I went to school with worked at Rolls-Royce. It's the pride of the town to a large degree. So one of the real major global centres for aeronautics and for propulsion systems. So I've always had an interest in aircraft. When you think back to the 1980s, it wasn't that common to go on a flight. So our family holidays were often packed in the back of a car, drive to the south of France, or even drive somewhere in the UK. Very rarely got the chance to go on an aircraft, until I was a teenager, really. But then you start to see how the world opens up. When you're able to travel, you're able to go to different places, short-haul flights across the continent, and then even into places like America. So for me, that was hugely eye-opening. So I'm a big believer in the fundamental benefits of aviation. Most of my career, I'm an English literature graduate, so I was good with words. So most of my career has been about communications, usually for tech companies and deep tech companies. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I started working more in the aviation sphere and began working with ZeroAvia when they started to think about coming into the UK. And it's been a really fascinating ride so far. So, on the climate side, I think just like so many people today, we're all cognizant of the impacts. You can see them in the news all the time in terms of extreme weather events and the impact it's having on people's lives. And the scientific consensus is clear. It's a very, very scary trajectory that we're on. Aviation is going to play a big part in that unless we can do something substantial to change. So that's really what drives me to want to come here to work every day.
Brilliant, thank you. So now in the present day today, what are some of the key things ZeroAvia is working on right now that you're kind of excited about and you're keen to explain to our audience?
Yeah, so fuel cells have been a concept for nearly 200 years. It was invented by a Welsh scientist, so this is not a new scientific concept. What's happened over the last 20, 30 years is the technology has really advanced, and it's brought it to the point where the weight, the power-to-weight ratio of those systems actually works for aviation, for commercial aviation. So where we can't deliver electrification with batteries because you essentially you have too much weight to carry and then it affects the payload and the range of the aircraft, we can do that with fuel cell. We are on the cusp of certifying, we think, the 600 kilowatt system. So we've been working with the CAA on that project. We hope to have an engine certified by the end of 2026 and have that in service flying cargo and passengers by 2027. So this is, for 10 to 20 seat aircraft like the one behind me. So these are the first baby steps, but ultimately ZeroAvia is working to scale this technology for larger and larger aircraft to serve more of the market so that we can get all the flights that we all take to be zero emission and have very little impact on the climate.
Thanks. So, and yeah, it's been fascinating to see some of that stuff and how much progress is being made, and some of the really skilled people and knowledgeable people working here as well today. So, looking forward, like the next 25 years, let's picture that we're in 2050. We've made rapid progress on climate action. We've got our act together as an aviation industry. How do you see air travel looking? What'll be different? And how might that affect like how an aviation worker goes to work as well?
Yeah, we do a lot of work with airports about how the ground ecosystem is changing and making sure that our first customers will be provisioned with hydrogen. They'll have the fuel available. So we're doing a lot of thinking about how that ecosystem works. From a passenger perspective, it might not be that different. I think you will see an explosion in new types of aircraft, which might be battery electric. We're excited because we think our electric propulsion systems have a role to play there too. So it may be that on your way to the airport, you're taking an air taxi as opposed to taking the car and being stuck in traffic. So I think we'll see some modality changes. But for a passenger, the commercial aircraft are probably going to look very similar. I think we will start to see towards the latter part of that period, we're focused on retrofit initially, so we can get technology into market, have people flying on low emission aircraft. But over time, towards the latter part of the period you mentioned, you may see clean sheet airframe coming in. Those could be blended wing bodies, so they will look very different, which is quite an exciting concept. But fundamentally, you want the experience to be very similar, but for people to be able to fly with very clean conscience. They're not doing big harm to local communities or to the environment at large.
Do you think we're quite interested in sort of whether the air transport system might become a bit more distributed as well? So at the moment, air transport is quite concentrated in certain places. Other parts of the world, even in the UK, there's a distribution of it, and particularly around the world. You think that maybe this will be an enabler in terms of like more distributed, more regional airports, and a kind of change in the network as well as just the technology in the aircraft?
Yeah, we definitely do think that. I mean, I think there is a benefit to the centralization when you think about hydrogen infrastructure in the first place. So when we think about electric vehicles, obviously battery electric has been the technology that's won out there. Particularly for passenger cars, and that's because you've got thousands of potential refueling and recharging places that are required. For airports in the UK, for example, it's 61. So the centralisation helps with the early stages of hydrogen because you don't need fixed infrastructure in a lot of places for refueling. But I think you're absolutely right, because what the technology offers with fuel cells is lower maintenance costs. So that's 25% of an airline's overall operating cost. And if you can have lower maintenance costs, you essentially, you can have lower operating costs and you can fly more routes. And so underutilized regional airports, of which there are, a lot globally, can start to get better point-to-point travel. So it doesn't need to be driving 2 hours. You might be able to fly from your more proximate airport nearby.
And just on the kind of, there's been a lot of discussion, particularly in the UK, the last few weeks on airport expansion and economic growth and how to get kind of kickstart the economy. Obviously, kind of encouraging innovation can then have like knock-on effects elsewhere, like developing electric motors, not just used in aviation, but you could see that having knock-on impacts in terms of the skills that are here and that kind of thing. Do you think that there's quite a big economic case for either the UK or any other country to lead the way in terms of this type of technology, because we'll get the benefits elsewhere in the economy as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's an immediate direct benefit if you can have more flights. I mentioned based in the economic, you can connect, certain places that have never been connected before. So that idea we mentioned before about the regional airports taking up. So there's an economic benefit there, connecting communities. In terms of the industrial strategy benefit, I think that's absolutely enormous. So whatever direction, there is the global aerospace industry, the global aviation industry is going to need to depend on cleaner technologies. We have to make strides. So the geographies or the countries that can perfect the technology that kind of wins out will get a greater market share. So there is a big opportunity in these industries. I think there's going to be a lot of jobs. We had our initial research and development projects supported in the UK by the Aerospace Technology Institute. When we came into the UK, we had 0 employees. We now have over 200. So you can see even in the R&D there is big opportunity for engineers, and then in the future, the manufacturing of those technologies, we see many hundreds of jobs scaling up as well. So I think there's a big opportunity for economic growth in aerospace, and in particular in clean aerospace.
Great, yeah. And so final question, I suppose, like a lot of people in our group, they're workers in the sector or they're students looking to get in. If you are passionate about sustainability in aviation, what sort of advice would you give if people what to look out for, what action they could do to make themselves more employable or to get involved with the sort of stuff you're working on?
Yeah, maybe just touch on one of the things that we look for at ZeroAvia, because it's certainly important to us that people have a passion for clean aviation, but also for the aviation sector in general. I think some of our engineers love working here so much because they're getting to work on something that's really cutting edge. It's the next generation, which is exciting because we've had 80 years of the jet engine, and it's perfected and perfected and perfected. This is something totally new. So from an engineer's point of view, it's kind of a dream. One of the things we really look for is people who do have diverse experiences, who've tried new and different things. So I think that's always kind of something to think about as well. So curiosity, looking to explore new ideas, that all helps with the innovation process. So as well as those core aerospace engineering skills that we require, I think having appetite to look at things like hydrogen and see how that works is really, really important.
Okay, yeah, so a bit of that pioneering mentality to go and work on the pioneering technology.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks very much for talking to us. I've got a final thing to give you, our safe landing lanyards that everyone in our group has. But yeah, really appreciate just being here, seeing like some of the stuff you're working on, and just wish you the best of luck in terms of the next few years, trying to get certified, trying to prove the safety and the reliability and the capability of some of this technology. You're really leading the way, so it's quite inspirational. And yeah, thanks for talking.
Thanks so much. Great.